Hello, everybody. It's the American Doofus Show. I'm your host, Barry Welsh. Don't be a doofus. It's day one after the announcement of the verdict on the police that were responsible for killing BREONNA Taylor. Basically, no charges were filed against the officers. Wanton endangerment was filed against one officer, Sergeant Brett Hankinson. And that charge was for firing into the apartments surrounding BREONNA Taylor and putting children in danger. Absolutely no charges from firing into BREONNA Taylor's apartment. The other two officers not charged with anything at all. And Brett Hankinson turned himself in. 32 minutes later, he was released on bond. There was more justice given to the dogs in the Michael Vick dogfighting case than there was to BREONNA Taylor. That's just a fact. One of the live streamers we watched yesterday, we did a marathon, 11 hours worth of coverage from Louisville. One of the live streamers that we watch, Riot Heart, his actual name is Jared Wright. And as men or young boys and teenagers do call each other by our last names, his last name was Wright, and it became Riot. And because he was in a punk band. And Hart because he had a deep connection to a boss that had given him a break, whose company had the name Hart in it. So he became Riot Hart when he started live streaming. Well, he was actually the last live stream we watched last night. And within 10 minutes of me pulling the plug on the show, Riot Heart was arrested. He was outside the corrections department. He was getting names of people, protesters that had been arrested, so that the Louisville bail fund would know who to be working to get out. And someone noticed him and checked, and he had a 3-year-old bench warrant for possession of marijuana. So they walked up and asked him if he was, and I'm going to have this video on later tonight. They asked him if his first name was Jared, and he said yes. And said last name Wright, and he said yes, and they arrested him. Again, it was a 3-year-old bench warrant for possession of marijuana. It was a justifiable arrest. I'm not saying anything about that. He has a larger bail than the police officer that was responsible for the death of BREONNA Taylor. A larger bond than the cops. It's a statement of where we're at. The fact that there was a legal decision, but there was not justice. The flames will continue to burn in this country over the next few days. Last night, things were relatively quiet in Louisville. Two police officers were shot. And one was shot in the stomach. The bullet entered just below the bulletproof material. And one was shot in the thigh. Both are in stable condition and are expected full recoveries. And those that watch the show know that I don't want to see anybody ever hurt. And the fact that these two officers were shot is saddening. But in certain communities, it was justified. The shooter is in custody, 26 years old, and the shooter was taken into custody. So justice will be served on the shooter, and we don't have to worry about that. 127 protesters were arrested yesterday in Louisville. Protests broke out all across the country from Washington, D.C. to Seattle, Washington. And we're expecting the same thing tonight. It's basically day one in Louisville. It's starting all over again. Louisville's not done. It's not over. I really believe it hasn't begun. The cops were ahead of the game last night. At one point, there were about 1,500 people ready to march, and the police broke that group up into smaller groups, rounded a few of them up, and dispersed them. From the police side, they handled things about as good as you can expect, other than their 2 officers being shot. We're going to keep an eye on Louisville. Again, it's not over. As I said, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, Atlanta, Detroit, New Orleans, Las Vegas, protests all across the country because while a legal decision was made, justice was not served in the eyes of many. Brett Hankinson will stand trial for wanton endangerment, again for firing into the apartments surrounding BREONNA Taylor's. There was no charges for his wanton endangerment of BREONNA Taylor, which is a sharp stick in the eye to the communities of color. Basically, they got off scot-free. Again, Riot has a larger bail than Riot, the live streamer from Louisville, has a larger bail for a 3-year-old bench warrant for marijuana than the police officers. 2 of them, no charges at all, including one of the 2 I haven't heard yet, but one of the 2 supposedly fired the fatal shot. And so it's all justified in the legal system. But that does not mean justice, and that does not mean that things are over. I just wanted to come on here, remind you, going to be live tonight at 9 o'clock. Going to be talking about all this. We're going to have a super chat. If you want to support the show and ask questions, make sure I notice them. Super chat will be up. Of course, we've got memberships available now too, and it just, I don't know. It was such an anxiety-filled few days leading up to the decision, and then such a such a strange situation. We expected it. Now, don't get me wrong. David Lackford, Dave's an attorney in Louisville, has been on the program several times. We'll have him back on again, of course. And he pretty much told us this is how it's going to play out. If anything, there's going to be a charge of wanton endangerment against Hankinson, and there won't be any charges against the other 2 police. And that's exactly how it played out. Grandmaster Jay had some information that it would be shipped back to a lower court for misdemeanor charges that ended up not being the case. So we will be here tonight at 9 o'clock. We'll be continuing to talk about that. National Guard troops vehicles are on the streets already in Louisville this afternoon. We'll keep an eye on how things go there, and we'll be back tonight at 9 live, the American Doofus Show. I'm your host, Barry Welsh. Day one after the verdict. Don't be a doofus.